Can you imagine the shock, the sheer disbelief, when a man's ordinary morning turned into a nightmare?
Jamal West, a black man with a quiet strength, found himself at the heart of a storm that would shake an entire police station to its core. Wrongfully arrested by two officers, Riley and Jenkins, whose prejudice clouded their judgment, Jamal's story is one of resilience, revelation, and a reckoning that no one saw coming. Who is this man, and why did his true identity leave the authorities speechless? Let's dive into the emotional roller coaster that unfolded on that fateful day. It was just another vibrant morning in the city's bustling heart. The sun peaked over towering skyscrapers, casting golden rays and long shadows across streets alive with energy. Car horns blared, sirens wailed faintly in the distance, and the chatter of early risers filled the air. People hurried to work, clutched steaming coffee cups, or strolled with their dogs, the neighborhood pulsing with life. Amid this lively chaos, Jamal West moved with a calm grace that set him apart. In his mid-30s, he wore a sharp, tailored suit that hugged his frame perfectly, his polished shoes clicking rhythmically against the pavement. A warm smile danced on his lips as he adjusted the cuffs of his crisp white shirt. Oh, how his presence commanded attention, not because he demanded it, but because his quiet confidence radiated like a beacon. He was the kind of man who turned heads effortlessly, his poise a silent promise of strength. Jamal had just savored a hearty breakfast at his favorite local diner, a cozy spot where the staff greeted him like family. They knew his order by heart: scrambled eggs, turkey bacon, and a colorful side of fruit, always served with a smile. As he approached his sleek black sedan parked neatly on the street, his phone buzzed in his pocket, a familiar hum that brought a grin to his face. It was a text from his mother, reminding him of their dinner plans that evening. How could he forget? Family was his anchor, his everything. Smiling, he typed a quick reply, assuring her he'd be there, his heart warmed by the thought of their shared laughter over a home-cooked meal. But then, in a heartbeat, everything changed.
Can you feel the tension?
Two police officers approached, their eyes locked on Jamal with a chilling intensity. Their faces were hard, unreadable, and Jamal didn't recognize them, new faces in a neighborhood that often saw officers come and go. But something about their gaze sent a shiver down his spine. As a black man, Jamal had learned early on how to navigate encounters with the police. His father's words echoed in his mind: stay calm, be respectful, never give them a reason to escalate. Those lessons were carved into his soul, guiding him through a world that could turn hostile in an instant. "Excuse me, sir," one officer barked as they closed in. Jamal stopped, turning to face them, his phone still in hand. "Yes, officer," he replied, his voice steady, polite, a model of composure. He glanced at the officer's badge, Riley. The other, Jenkins, lingered just behind, his hand resting ominously near his holster. "Can I see some ID?" Riley demanded, his tone sharp, cutting through the morning air like a blade.
No greeting, no explanation, juste a commande.
Jamal's heart quickened, but he kept his cool. He'd been here before, hadn't he? Yet something about this felt different, heavier. "May I ask why?" he responded, his voice calm but firm. He knew his rights. He hadn't done a thing wrong. Why should he be singled out? Riley's eyes narrowed, a smirk curling at his lips. "Just show us your ID, sir. It's a simple request." The air crackled with tension. Jamal held Riley's gaze, weighing his options. Slowly, he reached into his jacket pocket. "All right," he said, pulling out his wallet, "but I'd still like to know why I'm being asked for it." Could they hear the quiet strength in his voice? As he handed over his driver's license, he noticed Jenkins shift, his stance alert, as if bracing for trouble. Jamal's senses sharpened, but he refused to let fear show. He was in control, wasn't he? Riley snatched the ID, scanning it with a scowl. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" he asked, his tone dripping with accusation. Jamal's brows furrowed. Was this really happening? "I'm just heading to my car," he answered truthfully. "Is there a problem?" Riley ignored him, firing another question. "Where are you coming from?" "I had breakfast at the diner down the street," Jamal replied, his patience tested but intact. "Like I said, is there a problem, officer?" Riley's eyes met his, a flicker of annoyance flashing before he handed the ID back. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in the area," he said, that smirk returning. "You match the description of someone we're looking for." Jamal's stomach twisted. Oh, how familiar this script was.
A black man in an suit, in an neighborhood. Must be trouble, right?
He'd heard it all before, but it still stung. I see, he said carefully, choosing his words like steps on thin ice. Well, I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. I'm just here to get to my car and head to work. Riley didn't seem to hear him, stepping closer, his posture aggressive. What kind of work do you do? I'm a lawyer, Jamal replied, his voice even, unflinching. I have a meeting in an hour, so if there's nothing else, I'd like to be on my way. A lawyer? Did that throw Riley off? His smirk faltered for a split second, but he recovered quickly. A lawyer, huh?
You don't say.
Jenkins, silent until now, chimed in, his voice laced with suspicion. You sure you're not hiding anything? Got anything illegal in that car of yours? The tension was palpable now, a storm brewing. Jamal knew how fast this could spiral. Stay calm, he told himself. There's nothing illegal in my car, officer, he said firmly. You're welcome to check, but I'd prefer if you didn't waste your time. I'm just trying to get to work. Riley's eyes hardened. You don't get to decide how we do our job. Step away from the car. Jamal hesitated. He hadn't done anything wrong. Why was this happening? Comply and hope for de-escalation, or stand his ground and risk it all. His father's voice rang in his ears. Be smart, stay calm. All right, he said slowly, raising a hand to show he meant no harm.
You'll step back.
He moved away from the car, but Riley closed in, his hand now on his baton. Jamal's heart pounded, but he kept his face neutral. Show no fear, he thought. Not now. Then, without warning, Riley grabbed Jamal's arm, twisting it behind his back with brutal force. The pain shot through him, catching him off guard. He winced but didn't cry out. Before he could process it, Jenkins was on him, shoving him to the ground. Hey, what are you doing? Jamal protested, struggling to keep his voice calm despite the agony in his shoulder. He wasn't resisting. How could they think that? You're under arrest for resisting arrest, Riley said coldly, snapping cuffs around Jamal's wrists so tightly they bit into his skin.
Resisting arrest? The word it like a punch.
He'd done everything they asked, stayed calm, reasoned with them, yet here he was, face down on the pavement. His mind raced, grappling with the injustice. They decided his guilt the moment they saw him, hadn't they?
The commotion drew eyes.
Mrs. Agnes Carter, an elderly woman from the apartment across the street, watched in horror from her balcony. She knew Jamal, had seen his kind smile in the neighborhood countless times. What are you doing to him? She shouted, her voice trembling with righteous anger. He didn't do anything wrong. A young couple walking their dog froze, the man pulling out his phone to record. This is messed up, he muttered to his girlfriend. They're arresting him for nothing. Jamal caught a glimpse of the phone, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. Would that footage be his lifeline?
Could it show the world the truth?
But for now, he was powerless, at the mercy of officers who saw him as a threat. As Riley and Jenkins yanked him to his feet, Jamal forced himself to stay focused, to keep his composure. Every word mattered now, anything could be twisted against him. The crowd grew, more voices joining the chorus of outrage. This isn't right, a man yelled from across the street. He didn't do anything. But the officers ignored them, their faces cold, unyielding. They shoved Jamal into the back of the squad car, slamming the door with a thud that echoed in his ears. Before the car pulled away, Jamal turned to the crowd, their faces a blur of concern and fury. He took a deep breath, his voice rising with defiance. This isn't over, he shouted, the words cutting through the glass. This isn't over. The crowd stood stunned as the car sped off, his promise lingering in the air like a battle cry. Inside the squad car, Jamal's mind churned. How would he fight this? How could he ensure justice prevailed? The police station loomed ahead, a fortress of cold gray walls and harsh fluorescent lights. The hum of activity greeted him, officers bustling through corridors, some chatting, others absorbed in their tasks. But beneath it all was a tension, a quiet unease that made voices drop and eyes dart. Jamal was led through the front doors, hands still cuffed, Riley and Jenkins flanking him like guards. Their expressions were unreadable, but Jamal sensed their confidence wavering. Did they know they'd crossed a line? As they passed through the booking area, curious glances followed. Jamal wasn't the typical suspect, a well-dressed black man with an air of unshakable calm.
Over here.
Riley snapped, steering him toward a desk where a weary officer sat, barely looking up from his screen. Name? The officer asked, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Jamal West, Riley answered before Jamal could speak, as if to strip him of his voice. The officer typed, his eyes flickering to the screen, a slight frown creasing his brow. What had he seen? Something that didn't add up? He gestured toward the fingerprinting station without a word. Let's get this over with, Riley muttered, pushing Jamal forward. Jamal didn't resist. He knew better than to give them an excuse. As they took his fingerprints, he stayed silent, his mind racing. How had it come to this? He'd done nothing wrong, yet here he was, treated like a criminal. But he clung to his father's advice. Stay calm, think clearly. This wasn't his first brush with injustice, and it wouldn't be his last. He'd survive this, he had to. The officers led him to a cramped holding cell, the air thick with the stench of disinfectant and something sour. They uncuffed him, shoving him inside. Make yourself comfortable, Jenkins sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. You might be here a while. Jamal sat on the narrow bench, taking a deep breath to steady himself. He wouldn't respond to their taunts. They wanted a reaction, but he'd deny them that satisfaction. As Riley and Jenkins walked away, they shared a glance, a silent pact. They'd done their job, hadn't they?
Another troublemaker off the street.
But Riley felt a nagging unease. Jamal's calmness, his confidence, it didn't fit. Think he's a lawyer, huh?
Jenkins scoffed.
Probably just a punk in a fancy suit. Yeah, Riley mumbled, but doubt gnawed at him. Who was this man? Back at the desk, a young officer, Stevens, watched quietly. New to the force, he was eager yet sharp, smarter than most realized. Hey Riley, he called, his voice low. Can I talk to you for a second? Riley frowned.
What is it?
Stevens glanced around, ensuring privacy. That guy, Jamal West, I think I know him. He's not just a lawyer, he's a civil rights attorney. A big deal. I saw him in a news article, high-profile cases, major wins. Riley's eyes widened, but he masked his shock. You sure? Positive, Stevens said. This could blow up if he's who I think he is. Riley's stomach churned. Had they made a terrible mistake? Stevens didn't wait for Riley's response. He pulled out his phone, dialing his captain with a racing heart. Captain, it's Stevens, he whispered. We've got a situation at the station. You need to know about it. Meanwhile, in the cell, Jamal sat, his thoughts focused. This wasn't just about him. It was bigger, wasn't it? He'd been targeted, but why? He refused to let fear take hold. He'd faced worse and would come through this stronger. An hour later, the holding area door swung open, and Lieutenant Kate Thompson stepped in. In her late 30s, with sharp eyes and an air of authority, she was new but formidable. Her gaze swept the room, landing on Riley and Jenkins at the front desk, their hushed conversation raising her suspicions.
Riley, Jenkins. Chicaled, striding over. What is going on here?
Riley looked startled.
Nothing much, ma'am. Just another day.
Thompson's eyes narrowed. Really? I heard you brought in a man named Jamal West. What's the charge? Resisting arrest, Riley said smoothly. He was involved in suspicious activity and didn't cooperate. Thompson raised an eyebrow. Did he now?
She studied Riley, sans signe déception.
She dealt with officers like him, rule-benders who thought they were untouchable. But she played by the book and demanded the same. Take me to him, she ordered. Riley hesitated, then complied. In the cell, Jamal sat composed, his presence striking. Thompson paused, intrigued. This is him, she asked Riley. Yes, ma'am, he confirmed. He resisted, so we had to bring him in. Thompson stepped inside, meeting Jamal's steady gaze.
Monsieur West, I'm Lieutenant Kate Thompson. I want your side of the story.
Lieutenant, I did no such thing. Jamal said firmly. I complied fully with Officers Riley and Jenkins. I was walking to my car when they stopped me. I asked why, and that question escalated things. Next thing I knew, I was cuffed, accused of resisting, despite following every order. Thompson listened, noting his measured tone, his underlying strength. This wasn't just anyone. She turned to Riley. Is that true? Did he comply? Riley shifted. Well, ma'am, he questioned us, and it got tense. We thought he was hiding something. Based on what? Thompson snapped.
Riley faltered. A good feeling, ma'am. A good feeling.
Thompson's voice was incredulous. Before Riley could respond, Stevens burst in, breathless.
Lieutenant, I need to speak with you.
She stepped out, closing the cell door.
What is it?
Stevens leaned in. Jamal West is a prominent civil rights attorney. He's taken on major cases, headlines, big wins. If this gets out, it's a disaster.
Thompson at 5.
She'd suspected more to this, but this? This was explosive. She scanned Stevens' phone, Jamal's profile confirming his powerhouse status. This could ruin them.
Riley, Jenkins. She barked, storming back.
We need to talk now. In a private room, she unleashed her fury. Do you realize who you've arrested? Jamal West is a civil rights titan. If he sues, we're done.
Riley pâled.
We didn't know, ma'am. You should've, she snapped.
Outside, chants grêles loudés, protester demanding justice.
The crowd swelled, media arriving, cameras flashing. Thompson watched from the window, her jaw tight. We need to release him, she told Stevens. It's the only way to calm this. They'd frame it as a misunderstanding, but would it be enough? In the cell, Jamal heard the growing roar, his family and community rallying. Hope flickered, but he stayed cautious. At the front, Thompson confronted Riley and Jenkins, their reports a weak defense. We'll talk later, she warned icily. Opening Jamal's cell, she spoke calmly. Mr. West, it was a misunderstanding.
You're free to go.
Jamal stood, guarded.
A misunderstanding?
Is that what we call this? I'm sorry, she said sincerely. This shouldn't have happened. He nodded, his eyes sharp. This isn't over, Lieutenant. Escorted out, Jamal stepped into a cheering crowd, cameras flashing, his family rushing to him. Thompson watched, knowing this was just the beginning. Jamal's fight was far from over, and the station would feel the ripples for years. Would they ever make this right? Name? The officer barked, his fingers hovering over the keyboard, his eyes barely lifting from the screen. Jamal West, Riley snapped before Jamal could even open his mouth, as if stealing his voice could strip away his dignity too. The officer typed, his gaze flicking to the monitor, a faint frown creasing his brow. Did he see something unexpected? He didn't say a word, just waved Riley toward the fingerprinting station with a lazy flick of his hand. Let's get this over with, Riley muttered, shoving Jamal forward with a rough push that made Jamal's jaw tighten. Oh, how he wanted to protest, to shout that this was all wrong. But Jamal didn't resist, he knew better. One wrong move, and they'd twist it against him. He stayed silent, his mind racing like a storm. How could this be happening? He'd done nothing wrong, yet here he was, treated like a common criminal. His heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm, to think clearly. This wasn't his first brush with injustice, and God help him, it probably wouldn't be the last. As they pressed his fingers onto the cold sticky pad for prints, Jamal's thoughts churned. Each press felt like a brand, marking him for something he didn't do. Can you imagine the humiliation, the anger bubbling beneath his composed exterior? He'd spent his life building a reputation, a career, only to be reduced to this moment, cuffed, accused, powerless. But he clung to his father's lessons. Stay steady, don't give them a reason to escalate. Those words were his lifeline, keeping him grounded as Riley and Jenkins loomed over him, their smugness a silent taunt. Fingerprinting done, the officers marched Jamal to a small holding cell tucked in the station's shadowy back corner. The cell was a claustrophobic box, barely big enough to breathe in, with a narrow bench bolted to one wall and a grimy metal toilet in the corner. The air was thick, heavy with a sharp sting of disinfectant mixed with something sour, something that clung to the back of your throat. They uncuffed him with a clank, Jenkins giving him a hard shove inside. Make yourself comfortable, Jenkins sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm that cut like a knife. You might be here a while, pal. Jamal stumbled but caught himself, sitting on the bench with a deep, steadying breath. Oh, how he wanted to fire back, to call out their injustice. But he bit his tongue. There was no point in responding to their taunts. They were baiting him, hungry for a reaction. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction.
Not now, not ever.
As Riley and Jenkins sauntered away, they shared a glance, a silent pact that they'd done their job, another troublemaker locked away. But something gnawed at Riley, a nagging unease he couldn't shake. Was it Jamal's unshakable calm, his quiet confidence that didn't fit the mold of the usual suspects? Think he's a lawyer, huh? Jenkins scoffed as they reached the front desk, his laugh sharp and mocking. Probably just another punk with a fancy suit, acting all high and mighty. Yeah, Riley mumbled, but his mind was elsewhere, tangled in doubt. Something about Jamal didn't add up. His poise, his steady gaze, it wasn't right. Had they made a mistake? He shook his head, trying to push the thought away. They had their orders, followed protocol. That was enough, wasn't it? Or was it? But then, a young officer, Officer Stevens, stepped forward from the shadows of the bustling station. Fresh-faced and only a few months on the force, Stevens was eager to prove himself, but he was also sharp, smarter than most gave him credit for. His eyes had been on Riley and Jenkins, watching the scene unfold with growing unease. "Hey Riley," he called, his voice low, cautious. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Riley turned, frowning, his patience thin. "What is it, kid?" Stevens hesitated, glancing around to ensure no one was eavesdropping. The station was a hive of activity, but this conversation needed to stay private. "That guy you just brought in, Jamal West, I think I know who he is." Riley's frown deepened, his gut twisting. "What are you talking about?" Stevens leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "I saw him in a news article a few weeks ago. He's not just a lawyer, he's a civil rights attorney. A big deal, Riley. He's been involved in major cases, high-profile stuff that's made headlines." Riley's eyes widened, a flash of panic breaking through his tough exterior. "Could this be true?" "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice tight, trying to mask the dread creeping in. "Positive," Stevens said, his tone urgent. "I didn't recognize him at first, but the name clicked. You need to be careful with this one. If he's who I think he is, this could blow up in our faces." Riley didn't answer right away, his mind reeling. A knot formed in his stomach, heavy and cold. They'd arrested him fair and square, hadn't they? There was no way he could be someone important. But doubt clawed at him, refusing to let go. "I'll handle it," he said curtly, waving Stevens off with a dismissive hand. But as he turned away, the unease settled in his chest like a stone. Had they just stepped into a trap? Stevens watched Riley retreat, his heart pounding. He couldn't let this slide. Pulling out his phone, he scrolled through his contacts with trembling fingers, finding the number he needed. With a deep breath, he dialed, praying he was doing the right thing. The phone rang twice before a gruff voice answered. "Yeah. Captain, it's Stevens," he whispered, keeping his voice low, his eyes darting around the station. "We have a situation here. I think you need to know about it." His words carried the weight of a warning, a spark that could ignite a firestorm. Meanwhile, back in the holding cell, Jamal sat quietly, his thoughts a whirlwind of focus and resolve. This wasn't just about him, was it? This was bigger, a piece of a larger puzzle. He'd been targeted, he was sure of it, but why? The question burned in his mind, but he refused to let fear take over. He'd faced worse, far worse, and he'd come through every time. His composure was his armor, his calm a weapon against the chaos around him. Can you feel his strength, his unyielding spirit in that cramped, suffocating cell? An hour crawled by, each second heavy with anticipation. Then, the holding area door swung open with a clang, and a woman stepped inside. Lieutenant Kate Thompson, in her late 30s, carried an air of authority that silenced the room. Her sharp eyes missed nothing, her presence commanding respect. New to the station, transferred just weeks ago, she was still learning the ropes, but one thing was clear, she was not to be underestimated. Her gaze swept over the officers, landing on Riley and Jenkins at the front desk, their hushed conversation raising red flags. Something was off, and her instincts screamed it. "Riley, Jenkins," she called, striding toward them with purpose. "What's going on here?" Riley looked up, startled, his composure slipping for a moment.
"Nothing much, ma'am."
Just another day, he said, forcing a casual tone. But Thompson's eyes narrowed, seeing through the act. Really? Because I heard you brought someone in this morning. A man named Jamal West. Riley stiffened, but he recovered quickly. Yes, ma'am, we did. And what was the charge? She asked, her voice calm but razor-sharp, probing for the truth. Resisting arrest, Riley replied, his voice steady now. We had reason to believe he was involved in suspicious activity. He refused to cooperate. Thompson raised an eyebrow, her skepticism clear. Did he now? Riley nodded, doubling down.
Yes, ma'am.
Thompson didn't respond right away, her gaze locked on Riley, searching for cracks in his story. She dealt with officers like him before, cops who bent the rules, thinking they were untouchable. But she was different, a by-the-book leader who demanded accountability. Could she trust Riley's account? Take me to him, she said finally, her tone leaving no room for debate. Riley hesitated, just a fraction of a second, but it was enough to deepen her suspicions. Right this way, ma'am, he said, leading her toward the holding cells. As they approached Jamal's cell, Thompson's unease grew. Something wasn't right, her gut was screaming it. When they reached the cell, she stopped, her eyes locking onto the man inside. Jamal sat on the bench, hands folded, his posture relaxed despite the grim surroundings. There was something about him, a quiet strength that made her pause. Was this really a man who'd resisted arrest? This is him, she asked, glancing at Riley. Yes, ma'am, he confirmed. Like I said, he resisted, so we had no choice but to bring him in. Thompson didn't reply immediately. Instead, she opened the cell door and stepped inside, her presence filling the small space. Jamal looked up, meeting her gaze with calm, steady eyes.
No fear, no défiance, juste composure.
Mr. West, she said, her voice measured, professional.
I'm Lieutenant Kate Thompson.
I'm here to ask you a few questions. Of course, Lieutenant, Jamal replied, his politeness unwavering. I'm happy to cooperate. His calm demeanor struck her. Here was a man in control, even in chains. Thompson nodded, impressed by his poise. I've been told you resisted arrest, which led to your being brought in.
I'd like to hear your side of the story.
Jamal's gaze didn't waver. Lieutenant, I did no such thing, he said firmly, his voice steady but laced with conviction. I complied with every instruction from Officers Riley and Jenkins. I was walking to my car when they stopped me. I asked why I was being detained, a simple question. And that seemed to set them off. Before I knew it, I was handcuffed, accused of resisting arrest, even though I followed every order. His words carried weight, each one landing like a stone in still water. Thompson listened intently, her eyes narrowing as she processed his account. His tone, calm, measured yet firm, told her this wasn't just another suspect spinning a tale. This was a man who knew his rights, who'd faced this before. She turned to Riley, standing just outside the cell, his expression carefully neutral. Is that true, Riley? She asked, her voice sharp, cutting through the tension. Did Mr. West comply with your instructions? Riley shifted, discomfort flickering across his face. Well, ma'am, he questioned us and things got tense. We had reason to believe he might be hiding something. Thompson's gaze hardened, her patience thinning. And what exactly was that reason? Riley faltered, his confidence crumbling. It was just a gut feeling, ma'am, he admitted, his voice weak.
A good feeling.
Thompson repeated, her tone dripping with disbelief. Is that what we're basing arrests on now? Riley opened his mouth, but before he could stammer a reply, the holding area door burst open. All eyes turned as Officer Stevens rushed in, slightly out of breath, his face flushed with urgency. He froze, realizing he'd walked into a powder keg.
Lieutenant, I need to speak with you.
Stevens said, his voice quick, glancing between Jamal and Riley. Thompson shot Riley a final piercing look before stepping out, closing the cell door with a clang. What is it, Stevens? She asked, her tone clipped. Stevens lowered his voice, urgency in every word. Ma'am, I've been digging. Jamal West isn't just any lawyer, he's a prominent civil rights attorney. He's been involved in big cases, the kind that make headlines. If word gets out we arrested him without cause, it's going to be a disaster. His words hit like a thunderbolt, shaking Thompson to her core. Her stomach dropped. She'd suspected there was more to this, but this? This was a nightmare. Are you sure? She asked, her voice tight. Positive, Stevens replied, handing her his phone, a web page open to Jamal's profile. This is him. If we don't handle this carefully, we're facing more than an internal investigation. It could take down the whole station. Thompson scanned the page, her eyes widening as she read about Jamal's victories, his reputation as a legal powerhouse. Oh, what had they done? This wasn't just a mistake, it was a reckoning waiting to happen. The weight of it pressed down on her, but she knew one thing: they had to act fast, or the consequences would be catastrophic. Can you feel the electricity in the air, the sheer weight of a moment teetering on the edge of disaster? Lieutenant Kate Thompson's heart raced as she scanned the web page on Stevens' phone, her eyes widening in shock. Jamal West wasn't just a lawyer. He was a titan in the legal world, a civil rights warrior who'd taken on police departments, corporate giants, and government agencies with a ferocity that left them reeling. This was no ordinary man. He was the kind of force who could flip this entire police station upside down with a single lawsuit. How could Riley and Jenkins have been so reckless? She shot a glance at the two officers lingering by the cell, their faces growing paler by the second, their unease practically screaming. Thompson's mind screamed one thing: act fast, or this powder keg would explode. Riley Jenkins! She barked, striding toward them with a fire in her step, her voice sharp enough to cut through the station's hum. We need to talk. Now. The officers exchanged a nervous glance, their bravado crumbling as they trailed her out of the holding area. In a secluded corner of the station, away from prying eyes, Thompson whirled on them, her expression fierce, her eyes blazing with righteous anger. Do you have any idea who you've just arrested? She demanded, her voice low but searing with intensity. Jamal West isn't some nobody off the street. He's a civil rights attorney, a legend who takes down cases of police misconduct for breakfast. If he decides to sue us, we're not just in trouble, we're done for. Can you imagine the panic in their eyes, the realization crashing over them like a tidal wave? Riley's face drained of color, his usual swagger faltering like a house of cards. Ma'am, he didn't say he was a lawyer, he stammered, desperation creeping into his voice. It doesn't matter. Thompson snapped, her words slicing through his excuse. You should have checked, done your homework before dragging him in here like a criminal. Now we're in a mess, and we need to fix it, fast. As she spoke, a sudden roar of voices filtered through the station walls, growing louder, more insistent. Thompson's head snapped up, her heart sinking like a stone.
Oh no, not now.
The crowd outside was swelling, their chants for justice and Jamal's release echoing like a battle cry. Could this day get any worse? Great, she muttered under her breath, frustration bubbling up. Just what we needed. Stevens, hovering nearby like a loyal shadow, stepped forward, his voice urgent. Lieutenant, the community's losing it out there. Activists, local leaders, even media, they're all showing up. If we don't act soon, this could turn into a full-blown crisis. His words hit her like a punch. Thompson knew he was right. She'd seen small sparks like this ignite into wildfires when mishandled. But this? This was a whole different beast. It wasn't just about calming a crowd, it was about saving the police force's integrity and dodging a legal and PR nightmare that could haunt them for years. How had it come to this? We need to get ahead of this. Thompson declared, her voice firm, decisive, cutting through the chaos in her mind. Riley Jenkins, I want a full report on this arrest. Every step, every reason, down to the last detail.
I don't care if we're till midnight. Get it done. Stevens, you're with me.
We need a plan to handle the press, to control the narrative before it spirals out of control. The officers scattered like leaves in a storm, each feeling the weight of her orders. Thompson's chest tightened, the pressure crushing. She'd only been at this station a few weeks, and now she was staring down a potential catastrophe. But she wouldn't let this destroy her career or the department's reputation. No way, she was stronger than that. Inside the holding cell, Jamal West sat, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts as the crowd's chants grew louder, their voices seeping through the cold gray walls. Can you hear it? The raw power of a community rising up? He knew his family was out there, his mother's worried face among them, alongside activists and leaders who'd always had his back. They wouldn't let this injustice slide. A flicker of hope sparked in his chest, warm and defiant, but he tamped it down. It was too early to relax. The police still held the reins, and he'd seen them twist situations to their advantage before. Could he trust them to do the right thing? He wouldn't underestimate them, not now, not ever. Back at the station's front, the tension was a living thing, coiling tighter with every passing minute. Outside, the crowd had ballooned to over 100 strong, their signs and banners waving like battle flags, demanding justice for Jamal. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, capturing every raw moment. The station was no longer just a building, it was a flashpoint, a symbol of the community's boiling unrest. Thompson stood at the front window, her jaw clenched, frustration etched into every line of her face. She was on a tightrope, one wrong step away from disaster. Do nothing, and the situation would implode on its own. Act rashly, and it could spark a riot. What was the right move? She turned to Stevens, his worried eyes mirroring her own. "We need to release him," she said, her voice tight, resolute. "It's the only way to de-escalate this." Stevens nodded, but his brow furrowed. "But the media, Lieutenant, how do we explain it? They won't buy us just letting him go without a reason." Thompson paused, her mind racing for a solution. "We call it a misunderstanding," she said finally. "We say we reviewed the evidence, found no basis for the arrest, and released him. We'll stress that we're serious about justice, about fairness. It wasn't perfect, but it was their best shot. Could it calm the storm outside? With luck, it might just work." Thompson knew the stakes were sky high. This wasn't just about one man, it was about her department, her career, the trust of an entire city. She turned from the window, her resolve hardening as she headed back to the holding area. She was determined to end this before it spiraled further. Passing Riley and Jenkins, hunched over their reports, typing furiously, she paused, her gaze icy. "When this is over, we're having a long talk about what went wrong here," she said coldly. "And trust me, it won't be pleasant." Riley swallowed hard, nodding, his bravado gone. He knew he was in deep, but all he could do was hope Thompson could clean up their mess. Reaching Jamal's cell, Thompson opened the door herself, stepping inside with a calm she didn't fully feel. "Mr. West, I've reviewed the situation, and it's clear there was a misunderstanding. You're free to go." Jamal rose slowly, his expression guarded, his eyes sharp. "A misunderstanding, Lieutenant? Is that what we're calling this?" His voice was calm but laced with steel, a challenge she couldn't ignore. Thompson met his gaze, unflinching. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "I'm deeply sorry for what happened today. It shouldn't have gone this far." Could he see her sincerity, or was the damage too deep? Jamal studied her, his sharp eyes searching for any hint of deceit. After a moment, he nodded, but his words carried weight. "I appreciate your apology, Lieutenant, but you should know, this isn't over." Thompson's heart sank. Oh, she didn't doubt him for a second. Jamal West wasn't the type to let this slide, and she braced for the storm he'd bring. But for now, her focus was getting him out safely, calming the chaos outside. She escorted him through the station, past officers who avoided his gaze, their tension palpable. At the front door, Thompson paused, taking a deep breath. "I'll do everything I can to make this right," she said quietly, her voice soft but earnest. Jamal nodded, silent, his resolve unshaken. He stepped outside, and the crowd exploded into cheers, a wave of joy and relief crashing over them. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but Jamal moved through it all with calm dignity, heading straight for his family and friends. As he embraced his loved ones, their tears and laughter mingling, Thompson watched from the doorway, her face unreadable. This was just the beginning, wasn't it? Jamal's fight was far from over, and the ripples of this day would echo for years. For now, the immediate crisis was easing. The crowd began to disperse, reporters packed up, and the station's suffocating tension started to lift. But Thompson knew the road ahead was long and treacherous. She was determined to face it, to repair the damage done. As Jamal walked away, he carried a fire within him. Wronged, yes, but he knew how to turn that wrong into something powerful. The truth would come out, and when it did, this police department, this town, would never be the same. Could they withstand the reckoning he'd bring? The station was still buzzing with a heavy, uneasy energy long after Jamal's release. Lieutenant Kate Thompson couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this was far from over. Sitting in her office, She pored over the preliminary reports from Riley and Jenkins, their words blurring as her mind kept circling back to Jamal. His calm, his composure, the way he seemed almost expectant, it haunted her. What was it about him that felt so significant? Thompson trusted her instincts, honed over years on the force. If something didn't add up, she'd dig until she found the truth. And right now, nothing was adding up. Outside her office, the station hummed with a subdued tension. Officers moved quietly, avoiding eye contact, knowing they were still on thin ice. The crowd outside had mostly scattered, but the damage was done. This wasn't going away. Thompson leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling, the silence in her office a stark contrast to the turmoil in her head. She had to know more about Jamal West, to understand why his arrest had sparked such a firestorm. She couldn't let this slide, not for her sake, not for the department's. Her fingers flew across her keyboard as she searched for information on Jamal, her heart pounding with anticipation. The results were staggering. Articles, news clips, interviews. They painted a vivid picture of a man who was so much more than a lawyer. Jamal West was a force of nature, a civil rights attorney who'd taken on the country's most powerful players and won. Her eyes narrowed as she read about his latest triumph, a high-profile lawsuit against a police department in another city, exposing corruption so deep it led to firings and criminal charges. It was a massive victory, but it had painted a target on his back, hadn't it? Law enforcement agencies nationwide were watching him, and now he was here in her station, caught in their web. Oh, what had Riley and Jenkins stumbled into? The truth was dawning, and it was terrifying. Can you feel the chill that ran down Lieutenant Kate Thompson's spine as she dug deeper into Jamal West's background? Her blood turned to ice when she stumbled upon a detail that hit like a thunderbolt. Jamal wasn't just a lawyer, he was neck-deep in a federal investigation into systemic racism in law enforcement. This was no small-time case. It had already forced federal oversight on several police departments, with whispers of more under the microscope. Thompson's heart pounded like a drum as the implications crashed over her. Oh, what had they stepped into? She grabbed her phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed a trusted FBI contact, someone who'd give her the straight truth without fanning the flames. The call was quick, but by the time she hung up, her worst fears were confirmed. Jamal West was working undercover, gathering damning evidence for a federal case that could topple high-ranking officials, maybe even in her own department. How could this have happened right under their noses? Thompson slumped back in her chair, her mind spinning like a hurricane. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a catastrophe. Jamal hadn't been in the wrong place at the wrong time. He'd been targeted, and Riley and Jenkins had walked straight into a trap. If this broke wide open, the scandal would be seismic, shaking the city to its core. She needed to confront those officers, but first, she had to arm herself with every scrap of information. For the next hour, she dove into Jamal's world, his cases, his connections, the sprawling federal investigation. Each new detail tightened the knot in her stomach, convincing her this was far more dangerous than anyone realized. Could they even contain this? Finally, Thompson stood, taking a deep breath to steady her nerves. She was about to wade into a storm, but there was no turning back. She couldn't let her department crumble because of someone else's blunder. Marching to the officer's bullpen, she steeled herself for the showdown. Riley and Jenkins were at their desks, hunched over their reports, their faces tense. They looked up as she approached, sensing the fire in her stride. "Lieutenant," Riley said, his voice cautious, guarded. "Is there something you need?" Oh, did he really think he could play it cool? Thompson crossed her arms, her stare cold enough to freeze them in place. "We need to talk. Now." The officers exchanged a wary glance, their confidence cracking, but they nodded and followed her to an empty conference room. She slammed the door behind them, the stark room, bare except for a long table and a few chairs, feeling like a courtroom. This was where hard truths came to light, and both officers knew they were in for it. "Lieutenant, what's this about?" Jenkins asked, trying to sound casual, but his voice trembled, betraying his nerves. Did he think he could dodge this? Thompson didn't mince words. "I know who Jamal West is." Riley's eyes widened, and Jenkins stiffened, their faces flashing with panic. They hadn't known, had they? And now their ignorance was their undoing. "Do you have any idea what kind of trouble you've caused?" she hissed, her voice low, dangerous, like a storm about to break. "Jamal West isn't just a civil rights attorney, he's a federal asset. He's been working undercover, gathering evidence on police corruption, evidence that could drag this department through the mud. Can you imagine the terror sinking into their bones? Riley's face went ashen, his bravado shattered. We didn't know, Lieutenant. He didn't say anything about being undercover. We thought he was just another. His voice trailed off, but Thompson pounced. Just another what? She snapped, her words like a whip.
Just another black man you could bully without consequence.
Jenkins flinched, his eyes dropping to the floor, shame written across his face. Riley tried to speak, but no words came, only the heavy silence of their guilt. Thompson saw it, the dawning horror as they realized the weight of their actions. You two have put us all at risk, she said, her tone icy, cutting. Not just the department, but the entire city. If this investigation blows up, we're all going down. Riley found his voice, weak and desperate. Lieutenant, we didn't know. We were just following protocol. Protocol. Thompson roared, her voice rising with fury. What protocol? You arrested a man without cause. You treated him like a criminal, and now we're tangled in a federal investigation that could torch everything we've built. This isn't just about you anymore, it's about all of us. Jenkins looked like he might be sick, his face pale. What do we do now, Lieutenant? He whispered, fear choking his words. Before she could answer, the door burst open, and Chief of Police Frank Daniels stormed in, his face red with rage, his eyes blazing like wildfire. Lieutenant Thompson, he bellowed, his voice shaking the room.
What the hell is going on here?
Thompson straightened, meeting his furious gaze, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. Chief, we have a serious problem. Jamal West is, I know exactly who Jamal West is. Daniels cut her off, his voice dripping with venom.
And you know what kind of mess you've made, Thompson.
Could this get any worse? Thompson blinked, caught off guard.
Chief, c'est vite. Daniels snapped, silencieur.
Do you have any idea what you've done? We've got a civil rights attorney working undercover in our city, and you've handed him a loaded gun to take us down. This is a disaster, and it's on you. Thompson's jaw tightened, her own anger flaring. With all due respect, Chief, it's not just on me. Riley and Jenkins arrested him without cause, and now we're all paying the price. Her words hung in the air, sharp and true. Daniel's eyes flicked to the officers, his glare hardening. We'll deal with them later. Right now, we need damage control. Thompson nodded, forcing herself to stay calm. I've been digging into it, Chief. There's a federal investigation into systemic racism in law enforcement, tied to oversight of local police. Jamal West is collecting evidence for it, and if we don't tread carefully, it could destroy us. Daniel's anger simmered, but he held it in check, his mind racing. What's our next move? He demanded, his voice tight. Before Thompson could reply, a knock on the door interrupted, sharp and urgent. A young officer poked his head in, his face pale, nervous. Chief, Lieutenant, someone's here to see you. It's urgent. Daniels frowned, his patience fraying. Who is it? The officer swallowed hard.
A fédéral agent.
His name's Williams. The room fell silent, the weight of those words crashing down like a hammer. Thompson exchanged a tense glance with Daniels. This was it, the moment they dreaded. What now? Send him in, Daniels ordered, his voice taut. The officer nodded and vanished. Moments later the door opened, and Agent Mark Williams stepped inside, tall and imposing, his stern expression chilling the room. His dark suit was crisp, his badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights, a symbol of unyielding authority. Chief Daniels, Lieutenant Thompson, he greeted, his voice curt, his eyes scanning them like a hawk. We need to talk. Could the stakes get any higher? Daniels squared his shoulders, trying to hold his ground. Agent Williams, I'm sure we can explain. Williams raised a hand, cutting him off with a single gesture. No need for explanations, Chief. I know exactly what's happened, and let me be clear, this is a very serious matter. Thompson's pulse quickened, her eyes locked on the agent. His tone was grave, unyielding. Whatever was coming, it was big. Jamal West is a key asset in a federal investigation, Williams continued, his voice measured but heavy with warning. An investigation months in the making. His arrest was a mistake, one that could have massive consequences if not handled right. Daniels shifted, discomfort clear. "We understand, Agent Williams. We'll cooperate fully." "Good," Williams said, his tone clipped, "because your cooperation is the only thing keeping this from exploding." Thompson's mind raced, grappling with the enormity of it all. This wasn't just about Jamal anymore. It was about the department, the city, everything. One misstep, and it could all come crashing down. Williams' gaze hardened, his words like a gavel. "You will issue a formal apology to West on behalf of the department. Any resistance will face swift, decisive action." Daniel's face flushed, but he nodded stiffly.
Understood.
Williams turned to Thompson, his expression unreadable. "Lieutenant, you'll oversee this personally. No more incidents." Thompson nodded, her throat dry. "I'll handle it, sir." With a curt nod, Williams turned to leave, but paused at the door, his voice dropping to a chilling tone. "One more thing," he said, glancing back. "Consider this your warning. The federal government is watching. Any further misconduct will not be tolerated." The door closed behind him, leaving a stunned silence. Thompson felt the weight of it all, suffocating, crushing. The road ahead was a minefield, but she had to navigate it, no choice. The station was thick with tension as the day dragged on, the morning's events sparking a chain reaction no one could have predicted. Everyone was on edge, waiting for the next shoe to drop. News of Jamal's wrongful arrest had spread like wildfire, fueling outrage across the city. Protests erupted outside, activists, community leaders, and citizens chanting for justice, their voices a relentless drumbeat. Inside, Chief Frank Daniels was grappling with a sinking reputation. He knew the department was teetering on the edge of a PR disaster. A public apology was their only shot at containment, but would it be enough to soothe years of simmering anger? Could words alone heal this wound? Can you feel the crushing weight of guilt and dread pressing down on Chief Frank Daniels as he sat alone in his office, staring at the phone like it was his last lifeline? His hands trembled, betraying the storm raging inside him, as he picked up the receiver to dial the public relations team. He needed a statement, something powerful enough to convince the community that the department was taking this nightmare seriously. But deep in his gut, a bitter truth gnawed at him. No amount of polished words could erase the damage done. When the PR team answered, Daniel's voice was low, measured, but heavy with resignation. "I need you to draft a public apology. We're addressing the media outside the station this afternoon."
Understood, Chief. Calme the crisp repli.
"We'll get it done right away." Hanging up, Daniel slumped back in his chair, running a weary hand through his graying hair, his eyes clouded with regret. Oh, how the consequences of his past choices haunted him now. For years, he turned a blind eye to officers like Riley and Jenkins, excusing their oversteps as part of the job, convincing himself that small compromises kept the peace. But those compromises had piled up, and now they were crashing down like a house of cards. How could he have been so blind? A sharp knock on the door jolted him from his thoughts, and Lieutenant Kate Thompson stood there, her face a mix of tension and fierce determination. "Chief, Jamal West is waiting outside with the crowd," she said, her voice steady but urgent. Daniels nodded, forcing himself to his feet, his legs heavy as lead. "Good. I'm going out there to make the apology." But Thompson hesitated, stepping closer, her eyes searching his. "Chief, I need to tell you something before you face them." Daniels raised an eyebrow, a flicker of unease stirring.
"What is it, Thompson?"
She took a deep breath, bracing herself. "I've uncovered evidence of systemic corruption in our department, bribery, cover-ups, racial profiling. It's not just Riley and Jenkins. This has been going on for years, swept under the rug."
The worded Daniels like a ponche, a-t-il racine daouni spin.
"Could this be true? Are you sure?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, dreading the answer. Thompson nodded, her gaze unwavering. "I've started gathering evidence with Jamal's help and the federal oversight team. We can clean this up, but it's going to be a long, brutal fight." Daniels exhaled, his shoulders sagging under the crushing weight of her revelation. "Then we do what we must," he said, his voice hollow. "It's time to face the music." Thompson gave a small nod, approval in her eyes.
"I'll stand by you out there, Chief."
"We need to show the community we're serious about change." Daniels didn't speak, but his haunted look said it all. This wasn't about saving face anymore, it was about survival. Could they save the department from collapse? Together, they left the office, their footsteps echoing as they approached the station's front doors. The roar of the crowd outside grew louder, a chorus of angry voices demanding justice, chanting for accountability. Daniel's stomach twisted with anxiety, but he kept his face a mask of calm as he pushed open the doors and stepped into the blinding sunlight. The crowd fell silent, their eyes boring into him, judging, waiting. Cameras clicked like gunfire, microphones thrust forward, reporters shouting questions, but Daniels ignored them, his focus locked on the podium set up for the press conference. There, among the sea of faces, stood Jamal West, his expression unreadable, his presence a quiet force that commanded attention. Who was this man really, to hold such power? Daniels cleared his throat, stepping to the microphone, adjusting it with hands that betrayed a slight tremor. Could he pull this off? "Good afternoon," he began, his voice steady but strained, carrying the weight of his shame. "I want to start by acknowledging what happened today. The arrest of Mr. Jamal West was a mistake, a grave mistake that should never have happened. I take full responsibility, and I offer my deepest apologies to Mr. West and to our community." The crowd murmured, a ripple of skepticism and anger spreading like wildfire. Daniels felt the pressure building, decades of mistrust bearing down on him like a storm. Could they ever trust him again? "We know this isn't an isolated incident," he continued, his tone somber, heavy with truth. "It's part of a deeper problem that's plagued our department for far too long. I promise you, we're committed to tackling these issues head-on. Effective immediately, Officers Riley and Jenkins are suspended, pending a full internal investigation. We're launching a thorough review of our practices and procedures, and will work hand-in-hand with federal oversight to ensure we meet the highest standards of accountability." The crowd was quieter now, listening, but their eyes burned with doubt, weary from years of empty promises. Could words alone mend this fracture? "I know words aren't enough," Daniels admitted, his voice faltering, raw with emotion. "We have a mountain to climb to rebuild your trust, but we're committed to doing the work. We'll partner with community leaders, activists, and organizations to build a department that serves and protects everyone, no matter their race or background." He paused, searching for the right words to close, his heart pounding. But before he could continue, Jamal West stepped forward, raising a hand, his presence silencing the crowd. "Chief Daniels," he said, his voice calm but firm, cutting through the tension like a blade. "I appreciate the apology, but this isn't about words. It's about action. True justice demands real change, real accountability, real commitment." Daniels nodded slowly, stepping back, humbled. Oh, how right Jamal was. An apology was just the first step, the real work was yet to come. Jamal turned to the crowd, his gaze sweeping over them, his presence magnetic, drawing every eye. "We've heard apologies before," he declared, his voice ringing out, strong and clear. "But what we need now is a promise of lasting change. We need to hold those in power accountable, to build a system that treats everyone with fairness and dignity." The crowd erupted in applause, their voices rising in a wave of agreement, his words slicing through years of pent-up frustration. "Can you feel their hope, their hunger for justice? This isn't just about me," Jamal continued, his voice a beacon of strength. "It's about all of us. It's about every person wronged by a system meant to protect them. It's about ensuring no one else endures what I did, making justice not just a word but a reality."
The sheer greulude, a surge of energy washing over the crowd.
Jamal paused, letting their passion fuel him, seeing the spark of hope in their eyes, the yearning for something better. It was a powerful moment, one he couldn't ignore. "Change doesn't happen overnight," he said, his tone softer now, measured but resolute. "It takes time, effort, and all of us working together. But I believe we can do it. We can build a better future, not just for us but for the generations to come." The applause swelled, a tidal wave of support, filling him with unyielding determination. This was only the beginning, wasn't it? He was ready to lead this fight, to hold power accountable, to amplify the voiceless. As Jamal stepped back, weaving through the crowd to embrace friends and supporters, Lieutenant Thompson watched from the station steps, her heart a mix of relief and resolve. The immediate crisis was averted, but the real work loomed large. She knew the department faced a long rocky road, but with leaders like Jamal, maybe they could make it. Turning to Daniels, still by the podium, his face etched with exhaustion and grit, she spoke softly. We've got a lot of work ahead, Chief. He nodded, his eyes fixed on the crowd. Yes, we do. But we'll get through it. Could they rise to the challenge? As the crowd began to thin, Thompson's gaze caught a figure lingering at the edge, tall and imposing in a dark suit, his air of quiet authority unsettling. He watched Jamal with an intense, unreadable stare. Curiosity piqued, Thompson approached. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice firm. The man turned, his eyes sharp, piercing. "I'm here to speak with Mr. West," he said, his tone low, controlled. "I have a message for him." Thompson frowned, unease prickling her skin.
Who are you? The man's smile was thin, cold.
Just someone with a vested interest in justice. Before she could press further, he slipped into the crowd, heading toward Jamal, vanishing like a shadow. Who was he, and what did he want? Thompson's gut churned. She had a feeling this wasn't the last they'd see of him. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the station steps, Thompson felt the day's events settle into her bones. This was just the start, wasn't it? The fight for justice was far from over, the path ahead fraught with uncertainty. But for the first time in ages, a glimmer of hope flickered within her, hope that maybe, just maybe, they could start to right these wrongs. Across the city, in a small community center, another crucial moment unfolded. Jamal sat at a table, surrounded by a vibrant mix of community leaders, activists, legal experts, and citizens, all hammering out the community justice initiative. "We need to focus on education," Maria Hernandez, a passionate schoolteacher, insisted. "Real change starts with our youth." Dr. James Carter, a sociology professor, nodded. "Absolutely, but we can't ignore those suffering now. We need a multi-pronged approach." Their voices buzzed with purpose, a shared dream of a better future. Could they turn this vision into reality? Can you imagine the electric buzz in that small community center, where passion and purpose collided in a room full of determined voices? Jamal West sat at the heart of it all, his pen scratching notes, his sharp eyes tracking every word as community leaders, activists, and experts poured their hearts into the discussion. Oh, how their fire impressed him. Each perspective, fierce, thoughtful, brimming with expertise, lit up the space, exactly the collaborative spirit he dreamed of. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a movement, a tapestry woven from the community's collective strength. As the conversation deepened, concrete plans took shape, each one a bold step toward justice. They'd launch a legal aid clinic to offer free representation to those who couldn't afford it. Can you believe the hope that promise sparked? They'd form a community oversight board to work alongside the police department's internal affairs, ensuring accountability. And they'd create educational programs for schools and community centers, teaching civil rights, civic engagement, and conflict resolution to shape a brighter future. Wasn't this the kind of change they'd all been fighting for? By the time the meeting wrapped up, the room hummed with energy, every person focused, driven, their spirits soaring. They knew the road ahead was long, daunting, even, but those first steps together felt like a triumph. As weeks turned into months, the city began to shift, small but powerful changes rippling through its core. The police department, under Lieutenant Kate Thompson's watchful eye and the newly formed oversight board, rolled out training programs that were nothing short of revolutionary. De-escalation techniques, cultural sensitivity, these weren't just buzzwords but real tools to rebuild trust. Officers like Stevens, who'd shown a genuine hunger to do better, were given chances to shine, working side by side with community leaders and social workers. Could this be the start of something truly transformative? Meanwhile, the Community Justice Initiative was a force of nature, hitting the ground running with unstoppable momentum. Their legal aid clinic was already tackling dozens of cases, offering a lifeline to those wrongfully arrested or battered by police misconduct. How incredible was that? The educational programs were taking root in schools, with pilot projects sparking excitement and plans to spread citywide. But the real magic? It was in the city's atmosphere itself, a new sense of engagement, of people uniting to confront deep-rooted issues. Neighborhood watch groups teamed up with police to boost safety without leaning on racial profiling. Community forums popped up regularly, giving citizens and officials a platform to talk openly, honestly, face-to-face. Wasn't this what a community should feel like? Of course, it wasn't all rosy. Far from it. Incidents of misconduct still flared, moments of tension and mistrust lingered like stubborn shadows. Change was a slog, and some fought it tooth and nail, clinging to the old ways. But here's what made it different. Systems were now in place to tackle these problems head-on, to hold people accountable, to keep pushing forward no matter the resistance. Could they keep this momentum going? 6 months after the incident that had set everything ablaze, Jamal found himself back at the police station, not as a suspect, not as a victim, but as a partner.
Can you imagine the shift?
He'd been invited to speak at a training session for new recruits, to share his story and shape the next wave of officers. As he walked through the station's halls, his heart swelled with a mix of reflection and pride. Oh, how much had changed! The place still buzzed with activity, but there was a new openness, a warmth that hadn't existed before. Officers nodded respectfully as he passed. Some even paused to shake his hand, their grips firm, their eyes earnest. Was this the same station that had once cuffed him unjustly? Lieutenant Thompson greeted him at the training room door, her handshake warm, her eyes bright with genuine respect. "Thank you for coming, Mr. West," she said, her voice carrying a quiet strength. "Your perspective is going to mean the world to these recruits." Jamal returned her smile, touched by her sincerity. "I'm glad to be here," he replied, his tone warm. "And please call me Jamal." As they stepped inside, he faced rows of young recruits, their faces a mix of curiosity and caution. Some looked wary. Could you blame them? He was a challenge to the status quo. But in their eyes, he saw potential, a chance for real change. "Good morning," he began, his voice calm, steady, resonating with purpose. "My name is Jamal West, and I'm here to talk about justice. Not just the kind you'll swear to uphold, but the kind that goes beyond badges and courtrooms. The kind that means treating every single person you meet with dignity and respect." As he shared his experiences, the pain, the resilience, the hope, he saw the recruits lean in, their attention locked on him. They asked thoughtful questions, sparking respectful debates, their eagerness to learn shining through. Wasn't this what progress looked like? When the session ended, as Jamal gathered his notes, a young recruit approached, her steps tentative but her jaw set with determination. Barely out of her teens, she carried a fire in her eyes. "Mr. West," she said, her voice soft but earnest, "I just wanted to thank you for coming today. I joined the force to make a difference, to help people, but after all that's happened, I started wondering if I'd made a mistake. Hearing you, it reminded me why I'm here." Jamal's heart warmed, her sincerity touching him deeply. "What's your name?" he asked, his smile encouraging. "Sarah," she replied. "Sarah Johnson." "Well, Sarah," he said, his voice kind but firm, "I'm glad you're here. This department needs people like you, people who care, who question, who learn. Don't ever lose that spark." As she walked away, her step a little lighter, Jamal felt a surge of hope. Oh, it was people like Sarah who'd decide if these changes would endure. That evening, in his office at the Community Justice Initiative, Jamal pored over case files and reports, the work relentless but deeply fulfilling. Every small victory, a case won, a life changed, made the long hours and sleepless nights worth it. A knock at the door broke his focus, and he looked up to see Maria Hernandez, the teacher whose passion had driven their educational programs. "Jamal," she exclaimed, her voice brimming with excitement, her eyes sparkling. "I just came from a meeting with the school board. They've approved our curriculum for every high school in the district." Jamal leapt to his feet, a broad grin spreading across his face.
C'était incroyable, Maria.
"Your hard work is paying off big time." Maria beamed, but her expression softened, turning serious. "It's our work, Jamal. None of this would have happened without you, without what you went through." Jamal shook his head, his humility shining through. "I might have been a spark, but this movement? It's bigger than me. It's all of us, working together to create the change we need." As they dove into the details of the curriculum rollout, Jamal felt a deep, soul-stirring satisfaction. This was real change, not just protests or speeches, but actions that would shape the future of their community. Could anything be more rewarding? Later that night, as Jamal headed home, he paused outside the office, the quiet street bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. The city was settling into its nighttime rhythm, a calm that belied the battles still to come. He thought back on the past 6 months, how far they'd come, how much still lay ahead. Looking up at the stars twinkling in the clear night sky, a sense of peace washed over him, soothing his weary soul. They were on the right path, weren't they? It wouldn't be easy, setbacks were inevitable, but as long as they kept pushing, kept uniting, they could build the community they dreamed of, one where justice wasn't just a word but a living, breathing reality for all. With renewed fire in his heart, Jamal started walking home, his steps light but resolute. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new chances to make a difference, and he was ready, oh so ready, to face them, one determined step at a time. The fight was far from over, but with every victory, every voice uplifted, they were carving out a brighter future. Could there be any greater calling? Oh, Jamal West's story hits like a thunderbolt, stirring the soul with its raw power. It's a heart-wrenching reminder of the deep injustices that persist, yet it's also a beacon of hope that burns bright. The emotional weight of Jamal's wrongful arrest, the sting of prejudice from officers Riley and Jenkins, and the fear of a system failing its people, it's gut-punching. But what truly moves me is Jamal's unyielding spirit, his refusal to be broken, and his transformation of pain into purpose. His calm strength, even in the face of humiliation, is nothing short of inspiring. How does one hold such grace under fire? The community's rally, the chants for justice, and the slow but real changes that followed? They fill me with awe. Lieutenant Thompson's resolve, Sarah's renewed passion, and Maria's tireless work show that change, though hard-won, is possible when hearts unite. This story isn't just about one man, it's about all of us, fighting for a world where dignity and fairness aren't just dreams but realities.
Jamalaise journée ignite a fire in me, a call to stand up, speak out, and never stop pushing for justice.
Isn't that what truly matters?